The mayor of Tijuana, Mexico, is asking the United Nations for aid to assist nearly 5,000 migrants from Central America. The city's adjacent to Mexico's border with the United States. It's about 30 minutes from San Diego. The mayor has said that he does not want to use the city's resources, but has not received much help from the Mexican federal government. The migrants, many of whom are fleeing poverty and violence in Honduras, are seeking legal refugee status in the United States amid opposition from President Trump. Will Grant is in Tijuana, Mexico. He's a correspondent for the BBC. So, Will, you've been at the border speaking all week with the folks there. Give us a sense of who these people are, where they're coming from, and what are you hearing from them?
Well, in fact, we've travelled all the way from the southern border of Mexico and Guatemala up through the country with the migrant caravan, and we've got to know them during that time. It is a mixture, really, of people from different parts of Central America, primarily Honduras, where they say they are fleeing, obviously, poverty. It's one of the poorest countries in the Americas. Violence, too. Many say that they simply can't remain in their country or in their home cities. They've had to move internally in Honduras, and now they are attempting this effort to make it into the United States looking for asylum.
How long do you think that people in the caravan expect to be waiting there in Tijuana?
I think that could end up being a matter of months rather than just days or weeks, primarily because the process itself is so tangled. And there is already a massive backlog of other people who got here long before they did, who are also applying for asylum. So in a sense, these people are the last in the queue. It's just they've had all this attention about their journey. So we'll wait and see. But I think it would be unrealistic to expect anything to happen before, the middle of January, the middle of February, perhaps, at the very earliest.
Well, when you talk about resources, Tijuana's mayor says he isn't getting help from Mexico's federal government. Neither is he allocating local resources for the migrants. So how are these migrants receiving any sort of aid at this point?
Right, Rena, and that's absolutely key, isn't it? The fact that they reach these towns and they're in dire need, and in many cases these towns aren't exactly rich themselves. They need immediate things: shelter, food, drink, medical attention. There are a lot of children. A lot of them have fever. Obviously, they're very tired, the distances that they've travelled. And yes, the mayor of Tijuana has been calling on the federal government to do more, calling on the United Nations to do more. The reality is that that response is still not there. It's happening at a time in which Mexico is moving out from one outgoing administration, Enrique Peña Nieto, and before the new administration has come in of Andrés Manuel López Obrador. So it's difficult in terms of political timing as well, I would say.
You mentioned the president. The mayor also says that Mexico's government isn't taking President Trump's threats to the border to shut down the border seriously. Does that seem to be based on what you're seeing? And how could the transition in the presidency affect all this?
Well, I think it will affect in the sense that just administratively things become very, very difficult in this period of transition on this side of the border. On the other side of the border, of course, as you say, the emphasis is on making sure that all of the security positions are in place, that, of course, the troops are there. That has been heard by the migrants. They're very aware of it, but I think we could probably see a protest of some sort on their behalf in the next few days, where they at least say, look, something needs to be done. We need to have our situations heard. We want to be heard. We're not trying to do anything necessarily illegal. We just want to have those who have legitimate asylum claims heard. Of course, others may actually break away from the group and attempt to cross under in an undocumented fashion in the coming weeks.
Well, what other kind of threats are migrants facing as they wait for asylum at the border?
Well, this is a dangerous city. That's well worth remembering. And of course, this whole region, is, dominated by drug cartels and gangs who manage the people trafficking routes into the United States. In essence, by staying together, by being a caravan, by having a media presence, by being so much the focus of all of this politics, they have protected themselves from being vulnerable to those gangs. Now, that might not last, particularly as the weeks and days drag on. So that is a danger. And of course, the other dangers are simply the elements. They're sleeping rough. There are a lot of children, elderly, disabled people. You know, it's a very, very tough experience. And nobody's saying that this should directly get them access to the United States. Everybody knows that this is much, much more complicated than that, and that they will have to go through a process. Only a tiny fraction of them will actually ever make it in. And they are aware of that. But they still say it's far better than what waits for them back in Honduras, and they're prepared to try.
Will Grant with the BBC. Will, grateful for your time. Thank you for joining us.